Now that we've installed the corner wind panels or the wind flaps on each of the corners, we're ready to install the end wall plastic. And so each time we pull plastic, the greenhouse gets end wall plastic on each end. So there's two pieces of separate plastic there, and then a separate piece for the top. So we'll put on the end wall pieces first, and we'll temporarily secure them at the top with snap clamps. That way when we pull the plastic for the top cover, it's going to be permanently secured over the end hoops with one run of wiggle wire going into both the top cover and the end wall cover. It'll make more sense when we're doing it.
Go ahead and pick an end to start on, and before you head up the ladder, you're going to want to do a few really important things. So you're going to want to make sure that the end wall plastic you have is wide enough and tall enough to cover the entire end wall. Make sure you have a foot or two on the width and the height. You're going to want to make sure that the inside of the plastic is facing the inside of the structure, and you can usually tell because the plastic has writing on it or symbols on it, and it will often say inside. You want to be able to read that from the inside. And the third thing is you're going to want to find the center of the plastic so that you can center it at the peak, as we're about to do right now. So regardless of what end you start on, you're going to want to have someone on the inside and someone on the outside of the structure. You could do this on your own from the outside of the structure, but it is much faster and you get a tighter end wall pull if you have a person on the inside and the outside. So you can see here the person on the outside and the inside are taking that center of the plastic and lining it up with the peak at the top. You're just kind of unraveling just a little bit so the wind can't get a hold of it on either side of that center peak. And there has already been single aluminum channel secured over top of that end hoop. So eventually, wiggle wire will be installed over top of the top plastic and the end wall plastic. But right now, really you're just going to unravel enough of the plastic to push snap clamps on to the end hoop right above the door studs. And here's what those will look like when you push those snap clamps on. You can see there's the door, and those snap clamps are right above the studs. After your snap clamps have been pushed onto the end hoop, you can walk out one side. So you're just trying to unravel some of what's there on half of your structure. And the reason we're only doing half of the structure right now, just kind of folding it over the end hoop, is we're trying to keep as much condensed in the middle in case a large wind comes as possible. Once you've loosely put the plastic over one half of your tunnel as shown here, directly below one of the snap clamps that you've pushed onto the end hoop, you're going to use that as a point of tension, and you're going to pull downward on the plastic and put a piece of wiggle wire, just a small 5 to 7 inch piece of wiggle wire, on the stud directly beneath that snap clamp as shown here. And you can see the reason we're doing that is now we have a point of tension. So the whole thing is squared up, and I can now pull from that center point on the plastic out towards the outside of the tunnel, throwing a small, again, 5 to 7 inch piece of wiggle wire into the aluminum channel. And if you have corner wind panels, this is the point at which you would remove the snap clamps as you secure the wire up toward the hip rail. This arrow shows the direction at which I was pulling to get that tension. You're going to repeat that on the other side of the structure. This entire process that we just went through, you're going to repeat again, going in the opposite direction towards your other corner wind panel. And here again, throwing in a 5 to 7 inch piece of wiggle wire. Now that your entire end wall plastic piece is square and relatively tight around the perimeter, you're going to put another snap clamp between the peak and the side, right where I'm pointing right here, for temporary securement. And you're going to repeat that process on the other side of your end wall here. Adding snap clamps at these two locations as shown really tightens up the perimeter. And if you really want to, you can take a small piece of wiggle wire and put it above the hip rail 5 to 7 inches or so. It kind of takes out a little bit of that last ripple that you'll be experiencing on either side of your end. So you just kind of pull that over top of your end hoop and push the 5 to 7 inch piece of wiggle wire all the way into the channel. Now you're ready to start the next order of operations. So after I have the end wall perimeter all secured, I like to start at the top of either side of your door, and I like to wiggle wire from the top downward. And I like to do this because I think it creates really good tension from the peak down to the bottom where you have your initial temporary 5 to 7 inch piece of wire. And I'm going to just work this wiggle wire all the way down toward the ground there. And I'm going to do this on either side of the door. And if you have 2 people, it's really nice. You guys can both get in there and work from the top down. That way you're kind of moving at equal points of pressure as you move towards the ground level there. If you need to, and here you can see I don't like a ripple, so I'm going up top side and I'm grabbing a snap clamp there, and I'm just readjusting the amount of pressure and the angle of pressure. And you may have to do this too. You're just going to have to play it by ear as you move through the installation process of your end wall. So you can see here, wiggle wire worked down, and now we're going to go out. We already have one direction going on the right. I'm going to start working from the left side there, and you're just going to push down with tension right towards the ground. And as you make your way towards the side of your structure, the main thing you want to take note of is that the hand that is pulling on the plastic or putting tension on the plastic, it is ahead of the hand that is wiring. This way, this hand is able to make the plastic tighter as you move the wire towards the outside of your structure. If it's a hot day, be careful as you're making your way with that wire. Sometimes as you're moving from one side to another, back and forth, if it's hot outside and you scrape over the plastic as you're pushing it into the channel, you might just scrape it and damage the plastic a little bit. So be careful, particularly on really hot days. When you reach the corner of your structure and you like the tension, go ahead and back off one link of wiggle wire, and you're going to cut it with pliers on the flat part of it and push it right into that piece of channel. You're going to meet that 5 to 7 inch piece of wire that you temporarily put in, and you're going to continue it. So keeping tension with one hand on the plastic, again ahead of the hand that's wiring, you're going to move from the baseboard or the metal baseboard up toward the bottom of the hip rail. And if you have corner wind panels, as you make your way to the top, you're going to stop for the last section so you can pull off the snap clamp on the inside, because it's difficult to get everything into the channel if that snap clamp's still on there. So go ahead and grab the excess poly on the wind panel and pull off that snap clamp and throw it to the side here. And then you can continue all the way to the bottom of the hip rail, backing off a link and using pliers to make a cut on the flat part of the wire. You can then push that in to the channel and you've secured your end wall. Go ahead and trim some of that end wall plastic off. Leave a couple inches. Don't trim too close to the end wall. And there you have it. Whether you have shutters, fans, doors, what have you, this is the point in time at which I would wiggle wire around them. We have already secured wiggle wire on the vertical studs, but you can see here we're going above the door now. As I go back and forth with that piece of wire, we're just going to go and we're going to finish it out. And what you'll notice is it's tight. So if you look right around that vent there, the plastic is very tight. And if you need to, as you're wiring, you might find that in order to not puncture the plastic with the wire, you actually need to take scissors and relieve some of that tension. And so the way you would do that is, as you're wiring, you just pause and, like you see here, cut a little bit. You don't need to cut all of it necessarily out at that one time, but you're just trying to relieve a little tension. When you have all the wire pushed into the channel around the doors and the vents, use your scissors to trim on the inside of the door framing and the inside of the vent. Just trim close enough so the vent can still open.
Now that we've installed 2 end walls tightly, it's time to pull our top cover.
If you're interested in these types of videos, please subscribe to our channel. And if you are interested in getting any of the materials that I mentioned in this video, please check the description. I'll have direct links to where you can find them.